Module 16 was about the Baroque period. The Baroque period was from 1600 to 1750. Wars were breaking out between the northern and southern countries of Europe. During this time period came the Scientific Revolution. The Scientific Revolution was the beginning of the separation of church and science. The church was not happy with this, trying and publicly executing Italian philosopher, priest, and cosmologist Giordano Bruno. Now more about the actual music of the period. Ritornella form, consisting of a recurring instrumental passage, was created. Melodies during this time were not easy to sing or play, but they were clear and distinct. There were three main styles of the Baroque period. Recitative was created. The aria style was created, sung by a single voice accompanied by instrumentals. Melismatic singing, the vocal technique of singing one syllable with many different pitches, was also popular for Baroque composers. Rhythm during the time was very steady and easily recognizable. A system of numbers placed under the music to identify the harmony, called figure bass, was invented. Basso continuo, also called thorough bass, was a bass line run through the piece. Homophonic music was the primary texture type. Most of the instruments commonly used today were used in the Baroque period. Gradual volume changes were not used during the Baroque period. Opera originated from the Florentine Camerata, a group of late Renaissance Florentine intellectuals that learned from Giovanni da Bardi. There were recreations of Greek drama using recitative that were considered the precursors to opera. Thousands of boys were castrated to preserve their high voice and take on roles in the high soprano range. Music still was strong with the church, and most choral pieces of this time were sacred music. Some important composers of the era were Claudio Monteverdi, Jean-Baptiste Lully, and Henry Purcell. Johann Sebastian Bach is considered one of the best and most important composers in music history and also came from this time period. Secular cantatas were also popular during the Baroque period. Oratorios, another popular style of music, are performed by choruses and solo voices with instrumental accompaniment and are similar to operas but without costumes, scenery, and actions. George Frederick Handel had monumental works helping oratorios rise to new heights in England. Some instrumental forms of music were the sonata, suite, and concerto. Baroque keyboard music falls into two categories: free forms such as prelude, toccata, fantasia, or more structured forms like ricercar and fugue. Module 17 was about the classical period. It was from 1750 to 1825. People of this time considered themselves to be in the Age of Enlightenment. Science discoveries from this time included oxygen and the law of conservation of mass, among other things. Rococo style refers to the soft and elegant French compositions of the 18th century. Most instrumental music from this point forward was in the sonata allegro form, meaning pieces have an exposition, development, and recapitulation. A symphony in a composition for a symphony is a composition for orchestral ensembles. The classical symphonic ensemble consists of 12 first violins, 12 second violins, 6 violas, 8 cellos, 4 double basses, 8 woodwinds, 4 brass, and percussion. Chamber music is music that a small amount of people can play in a small room. Stringed quartets became popular during the classical period. Vocal music was not as important in this period as before. The two giants of the classical period were Franz Joseph Haydn and Wolfgang Mozart. Ludwig van Beethoven was also an important composer of the time, famous for his Symphony No. 9 and Going Deaf, among other things. Module 18 was about the Romantic period. The Romantic period was from 1820 to 1910. People from this time were fascinated with music that told a story, otherwise known as program music. The Romantic period for painting was around 1800 to 1850, and Vincent van Gogh was the star. New rhythms were explored to make music feel more emotionally expressive in the Romantic period. The melodies of this time were often long and flowing. The harmonies were more dissonant than anything. Some important composers of the early Romantic period consisted of Franz Schubert, Felix Mendelssohn, and Clara and Robert Schumann. A virtuoso is one who is extremely skilled at performing a specific instrument. Niccolo Paganini was a famous virtuoso of the Romantic period. Gioacchino Rossini was a talented opera composer. Johannes Brahms was a composer who preserved the musical traditions of the greats who came before him while expanding in the harmonic structure and rhythmic variety of his pieces. Nationalism in music is when music makes the listener have a feeling of patriotism. Some later composers of the era are Richard Wagner, Johann Strauss Jr., Verdi, Puccini, and Mahler. Module 19 talked about the contemporary period. The period started in 1910 and is still currently ongoing. Both world wars and the invention of broadcasting and recording greatly influenced the 20th century. Melodies of this era are mostly instrumental rather than vocal, and rhythms are often irregular. Arnold Schoenberg invented the dodecaphonic system, which is a method of composition that holds all 12 tones of the chromatic scale. The early 20th century music was also shaped by nationalism, neoclassicism, and folk music, specifically by Igor Stravinsky, Bela Bartok, and Karl Orff. After the Soviet Union was created, young, lesser-known composers weren't allowed to lead the state, but well-known made composers, such as Stravinsky or Rachmaninoff, were able to come and go as they pleased. Leonard Bernstein was the first American composer to gain world recognition in the 20th century, while Aaron Copland is one of the most influential composers in American history. Over in England, Ralph Vaughan Williams and Benjamin Britten were instrumental in the music scene. Nadia Boulanger taught some of the best composers of the 20th century, including the aforementioned Aaron Copland. After Nazi Germany was no more, West Germany was led by composers Stockhausen and Werner Haynes. In some parts of Latin America, the music is a mixture of Native American music, European music, and African music. Serialism is a method of composition in which various musical elements such as pitch, rhythm, dynamics, and tone, color, may be put in order according to a fixed series. Jazz has a strong connection to art music.